Me the thumbs up. Hi, how you doing? I'd like to welcome the nearly 3,000 people who've joined this meeting. Thank you very much for coming along, and I hope you find it a useful meeting. I'm Mick Barry, and I'm going to be speaking in a little while, not too long. But before we do, we're going to have a couple of other speakers, a little bit younger than me, I think. And I've had huge help and assistance in the last couple of days from my assistant in the Dáil, who is Leah Whelan. And I've asked Leah to chair the meeting, just to introduce the speakers and help things along. So I'm going to hand over to her now, and I'll be saying a few words myself a little bit down the road. So I hope you hang in for that. See you in a few minutes, okay? So, Leah, if you could take over there.
Hi everyone, how's it going? So I'm Leah and I work alongside Mick. So I'm the person that a lot of you have been in contact with over Instagram over the past couple of weeks. So I'll be chairing the meeting. So I'm just going to go through how this meeting will be run. But first I'd like to comment on the developments at this point. So it does have to be reiterated that the government or the ministers weren't listening to the students. They weren't listening to their concerns around mental health, around COVID fears, or even around the Leaving Cert. But they listened to the teachers' union ASTI, because they organised within their union, and it was a collective and united effort. And students need to take up this role as well, and they need to be organised on the issue. And Mick is going to come in and make further points on this later on. But before Mick, we have two speakers. So first we have Harita, a Socialist Party student who played a leading role in the Cancel The Leaving Cert campaign last year, which was a successful campaign. So she's going to tell us more about that and what lessons to draw from it. Then after Harita, we have Cian Costello, who's a 6th-year student from Clare, and he posted a video, a really great video on his Instagram, talking about mental health and the impact that these restrictions and the confusion and the Leaving Cert is having on students. So he'll be in to make a couple of comments on that. There is a sign-up sheet that is going around in the chat that I would urge everyone to sign to keep up to date with the campaign and other things that are happening. So that will be sent into the chat both on Facebook and YouTube, and people should fill that out. So yeah, without further ado, I would like to introduce Harita. So off you go, Harita.
Thanks, Melania. I'm Harita. I'm a 17-year-old social student and survivor of the class of 2020 last year. And I think it's really significant because exactly 8 months ago, on the 8th of May, I was sitting here in this very room celebrating the cancellation of last year's exams. And 2 days prior, a similar rally to the one that we're having today, hosted by social students alongside TD Mick Barry, acted as the final push for students to put pressure the establishment and the government to cancel the exams. And that was after 2 months of being left hanging, 2 months of mental health burdens resulting from the social and financial repercussions of, living through the start of a global pandemic, 2 months of many poor and working class students struggling with online classes due to a lack of adequate technology and stable broadband connections. Whilst our peers in private schools were having, online classes, many of them. And for the last year, the pandemic has really exposed the inequalities deeply rooted in our education system, especially for us as the class of 2020. But again, that was only for 2 months. And at that time, myself and many others probably had the illusion that all of the questions surrounding the Leaving Cert this year will be resolved in time. Surely, when the government has had 10 months since the initial closure of schools, they should have been able to put forward a real alternative that would save their back, whilst they look like made absolute fools of themselves last year with their inability to actually face the reality of the situation. Surely governments on a wider scale internationally should have been able to come together and effectively tackle COVID by this stage. But of course, this has not happened. We have not only proven that the Irish education system, which relies on pitting students against one another on a baseless memorization test that actually fails to improve our intelligence in the first place, this kind of system is incapable of dealing with any sort of crisis. But moreover, this is directly linked to the inability of capitalism to deal with any crisis too. We have we live under a system that primarily puts profit before all else, and this includes the lives and health of us, like working class people. And whilst the vast majority of people have been suffering through this pandemic, our world's billionaires have increased their wealth by over $10 trillion. That's the same amount of wealth as like 10 million millionaires. That would be enough money to give every single person on this planet, adult and child, a $1,400 check. But of course, that's not happened. And the vast majority of people have been struggling through this pandemic. And it is working class people that are, not being cared for in today's society. And more than anyone, young people. This is why Norma Foley was so proud to send 61,000 people to risk their lives 3 days a week, and only stopped that decision and recalled that decision when endlessly challenged by students and teachers' unions. And she is still happy to leave you hanging with vapid statements, leave you and including your teachers hanging with vapid statements that traditional Leaving Cert will go ahead as planned this year. This is despite knowing that in a normal year, 75% of students experience extreme stress, as a result of the Leaving Cert. This is, findings of a survey carried out by StudyClicks in 2019. And for many students, this is exacerbated to even more serious mental health difficulties, such as anxiety and depression as well, which I'm sure Ian will be outlining. And last year, it was not the government's, acknowledgement of this that led to their change of heart and that saw the exams cancelled. It wasn't even TDs, especially Mick Barry, constantly standing up in the Dáil, although this was so significant and so influential that saw the Leaving Cert cancelled. It was the endless pressures and huge anger of students like yourselves and teachers that saw the exam cancelled. It was the 2,000 people that signed up to our Facebook group last year who'd agreed to take actions to cancel the Leaving Cert if the government would not take actions immediately and recall their decision. It was a Twitter storm organised by students last year who, added TDs and ministers for education that, got the hashtag Leaving Cert trending, which is again being done this year, that got the Leaving Cert cancelled last year. And it is these things that have influenced, the decision for schools to be closed this year. But of course, as Leah outlined, there is huge power in numbers, and there is huge power in us getting organised. The government expects, anger at their, decision to carry on with the Leaving Cert. They expect us to call for predicted grades, but we also must remember that the Leaving Cert is broken just beyond, COVID. And it is an exam that, forces students to memorize and regurgitate reams and reams of information that they forget almost immediately after sitting the Leaving Cert. It is also, we have the opportunity this year to demand more than just predicted grades. We need to remember that the Leaving Cert exists in the first place to dole out places in third level, which is underfunded in the first place. I think Ireland has one of the lowest rates of spending on education as a percentage of our GDP in the EU. This is something that must be challenged as well. We need to call for more than predicted grades. We need to call for a serious change to the Leaving Cert system, and a system that prioritizes competition over, actually educating its young people and nurturing them with brilliant values. I want to end by a quote I always reiterate from the brilliant civil rights activist Assata Shakur. No one will give you the education you need to overthrow them. I think there are immense lessons that we can learn from this quote, as well as from the lessons from last year. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much for that, Rita. You made some really excellent points around organisation, the Twitter storm, and what collective action can actually do. We've even seen it in other examples in the previous year with the climate strikes that are completely headed by young people. you made some great points about the huge investment that is needed in third level education and how that can cut across the financial barriers that many students face, that many working class students face. They can't pay the fees, and that's just the end of their college journey. If they don't qualify for SUSI, we need to remember that SUSI is a very, very small threshold that does lock people out of college, unfortunately. So thanks for that, Rita. Thanks for those points. So Cian is up next, and he is going to discuss the mental health impacts. So I will let him work away there now. Off you go, Cian. Thanks.
Thanks a million, Leah. And I'd just like to thank Mick for having me on and for all the work he's been doing. From the get-go, he's been one of the few TDs that has been listening to us students, and I just want to thank you for that. On Wednesday evening, I made a video on Instagram that has now over 40,000 views. And a lot of those students have been in contact with me outlining their concerns and their worries about the Leaving Cert. Now, I think it's important to know that a huge percentage do want to push for predicted grades, and that needs to be acknowledged. But we can't forget the other percentage that want to push for an easier exam that reflects all of the time that we've missed at school. Because the reality is we have been set up for a Leaving Cert exam, and a lot of students are very anxious about not having to sit an exam and an alternative. So I think when you're talking about cancelling the Leaving Cert, we need to assure students who are very anxious about that and worried. So I think that's something to bring into consideration, because we're asking this stuff from the government, and just that video alone and this meeting here is showing us that we do have strength in numbers, and that if we do work together, we have a very loud voice, and we can't be waiting around for answers anymore like we have been. And the government needs to be straight up with us and tell us what's going on, because it's not fair on us at all. You know, we don't want to repeat the mistakes of last year. The government should have had a plan B, I agree. And we're in January now, so we've 6 months till the exam where we can really focus on fixing the mistakes from last year. So I think that's important to note. As well as that, the mental health side of this is incredible. And Norma Foley sadly hasn't discussed this at all. She hasn't acknowledged it at all, especially on prime time last night. Students are anxious, they're worried, they're stressing incredibly. And the Leaving Cert is a stressful exam in its own right in a normal year. We haven't had a normal year whatsoever. We've missed out on a lot of school. We're missing out on another month of school now. So it's important that the mental health of students is put before a simple exam. And I think the amount of students that have contacted me telling me how anxious they are about this whole situation, it's scary. And they need answers, because it's not fair to leave them sitting around waiting, worried sick about this and getting into college places. So what I'm really asking for, and what I'm appealing to Minister Foley, if she does see this video, and I hope she does, is that we get clear, decisive answers so students can stop stressing themselves sick and focus on what they need to focus on, so we can all prepare ourselves for college. So that's my speech there, lads, and I just want to thank you again for having me on.
Thanks so much for that, Cian. It's really great to get some insight from students who are in sixth year and understand their experience. And the mental health aspect, is a huge issue and a huge concern. Something else that we should be highlighting as advocates of mental health is the investment that we need into our public services and our vital services. And schools need to take students' concerns more seriously, because it's clear that there isn't been any level of communication between students and the minister, and I don't know what stakeholders she is in contact with, but it didn't seem to be the teachers or the students. So thanks so much for that, Cian. So just before I move on, just a reminder of the sign-in sheet that's going around in the comments. Please fill that in. Be really beneficial to keep up to date with what's happening in this campaign. So before I bring Mick back in, we had a conversation before this, and I just realised that this is only a one-way conversation. It isn't a two-way conversation. We have no way of hearing what students are saying. There's a comment section, but that can be quite limited. So we are going to post a Zoom link, and there will be a Zoom meeting immediately after this call for students who want to organise their school, want to organise their class. And we'll send this link again in the chat. So Mick will come in on some of the comments, on some advice, and he'll make more points around this now. So Mick, if you want to come on in and work away.
Okay, you can hear me okay, yeah? Okay, so my name is Mick Barry. I'm a TD. I'm introducing myself here. I'm a socialist, lifelong, and a campaigner. I got involved in socialist politics and campaigning when I was your age, when I was 17. And I've been doing it for more than 40 years now. So I'm after giving my age away there. I try my best to campaign for the rights of working people, women, young people. Anti-racist work is an important part of what I do. I have been involved very heavily recently in a campaign by a group of workers who you might have seen in the media, the Debenhams workers. More than 1,000 workers, mainly women, who were sacked by email at the start of the pandemic and given just the bare minimum redundancy. But I've spoken to some of them, and I'm going to take a little bit of time out from that. I'm still going to keep doing that, but I'm going to take a little bit of time out to invest in this campaign for justice for the Leaving Cert students and for the cancellation of the Leaving Cert. And I'm taking a bit of time out to do that for, I think that the coronavirus crisis has winners and losers. I mean, Harita mentioned there the millionaires and the billionaires. I read the other day that the richest man in the world now is a guy called Elon Musk. He's got a personal wealth of 185 billion US dollars. He's overtaken a guy called Jeff Bezos, who's the guy who owns Amazon, benefiting from all the parcel post at the moment, who has only 182 billion dollars. These are some of the winners. But there are losers as well. Our old people who have died from the virus, working people who have been made unemployed from the crisis. But I think young people have been hit particularly hard. The vast majority of the restrictions are necessary, and we would appeal for people to stay safe. But they have hit youngest people the hardest, and young people have been brilliant over the last year with the sacrifices they've made in the interest of keeping the health and safety of the vulnerable people and the old people in society. And I think it's wrong that you are being punished. I feel that Norma Foley and Micheál Martin are putting the institution of the Leaving Cert and the tradition of the Leaving Cert way up there, and way down below is the question of the health and the safety, including the mental health. And I think Cian's video was brilliant, and I agree with the points that he's raised about mental health in this discussion. So that's it by way of introductions and the offer of help that I'm making to you over the next weeks and time. So where are we now? I think round one, if you want to use a boxing parlance, has gone to the teachers, and students are beneficiaries of that. The government tried to force 61,000 Leaving Cert students to go into the schools next Monday in the middle of a global pandemic. Very bad decision from the point of view of health, very bad decision from the point of view of mental health. But because of the action of the teachers, they have been forced to back down. So people power can be effective here. That's a very valuable and important lesson for you to learn, in my opinion. I think, they can't run the schools without the teachers, in the same way as they can't run the hospitals without the nurses or the shops without the retail workers. Ordinary people have power. And if 61,000 Leaving Cert students get organised and speak with one voice, you can be powerful in this situation as well. And I echo Leah's point about the importance of the Zoom meeting immediately after this. I don't, I'm interested in the idea of talking to you, but I'm more interested in the idea of a dialogue. We would have gone for a Zoom, only the maximum we can get on a Zoom is 500. And there's more than 3,500 people on this call at the moment. So you won't all be able to get on, but please make sure that there's a group from every single school so as we can begin to organise and increase the pressure for what students want. Now, round one we've won. What about round two? Round two, the government still wants to force you to do the Leaving Cert. It's the Leaving Cert at all cost. And not only is it a bad idea from the point of view of health and mental health, it's also unfair. You are the first cohort of Leaving Cert students, to my knowledge, in the history of the entire state, going back nearly 100 years, who have had your classroom time disrupted, not just once in 1 year, but twice in both years of the Leaving Cert cycle. And it's wrong to force you to jump through the hoops of the Leaving Cert, in that situation. I'm not a fan of the Leaving Cert. I think the Leaving Cert is an outdated exam. And I think it puts far too much stress on young people. I think essentially it's a way of deciding who's the ins and the outs. So in other words, what the government do is they don't give a college place to every sixth-year student who wants one, which is what they could do and should do. Instead, they have less places than people want. So there has to be winners, there has to be losers, there has to be a competition. The way they do the competition is the Leaving Cert. Another way of doing the competition is with predictive grades, right? Now, I listened carefully to Cian's opinion, and I've listened to points that have been raised on our Instagram page as well. And I know that there are students who want to say, let's have a choice between the Leaving Cert and predictive grades, or maybe we do both, and whichever one is best, that would be the one. And we understand that position, and we respect that position. But my view is that the best position is to say, cancel the Leaving Cert itself, and deal with that by forcing the government to increase the investment in third level, to increase the number of places in third level, and to make sure that every student who leaves school this summer has the option of a course in the college. Now, you'd have to have some way of working out as to who goes to which college and who goes to which course, and so on. But that's relatively easy to sort out once you increase the number of college places. So what we're saying here is cancel the Leaving Cert and massively increase the number of college places. Those students who want there to be a choice, we respect their point of view, and we will use that argument against the government as well, because the government are refusing to give people a choice. But we're campaigning for cancellation. I think it's the clearest position to put. So what's going to happen next? The online classes begin on Monday. If there's going to be online classes, they should be done in a fair way. For example, some homes will have a laptop and people will be able to work on the laptop. Other homes won't, or they won't have enough laptops. So people will be forced to do it on the phone. Some people will be using pay-as-you-go phones. That's completely unequal. Of course, there are the rural areas where there is no broadband, or where there is broadband but it's very poor quality, and not just rural areas either on that, but mainly. So if they're going to do it through online teaching, then there needs to be a level playing ground, fairness and equality. And what that means is that there should be a laptop for every student in the country who's doing online teaching. And the state should provide that. That's something that I will be calling for. But the online teaching will begin on Monday. But something's going to happen. I think the government are going to say to the union leaders, come and talk to us. We understand you've got some concerns about health and safety. We'll try and fix up the health and safety. And let's bring the Leaving Cert students in before the 3 weeks is out. I think they will try and do that. So I think they will try and do a deal with the teacher unions and force you into the schools, if not in a week's time, maybe in 2 weeks' time. It could be the 3 weeks, we'll see. But sometime in the next 1, 2 or 3 weeks, they're going to try and force you into the schools. Now, I think there will be a crisis when that happens. And later on the Zoom call, I want to hear your feedback on that. Because I don't think that the virus is going to be pushed back far enough in the next 2 or 3 weeks that it's going to be 100% safe to go into the schools. And I think there'll be a big controversy about that. Or alternatively, if the virus goes from bad to worse and the number of people dying begins to go quite high and the hospitals are on the verge of collapse over the issue, I think they might be forced to say, okay, we'll keep the online teaching going well into the month of February, in which case you're losing even more classroom time, face-to-face teaching time with your teachers and so on. And I think that will create a crisis and open up a debate in the country about maybe we should cancel the Leaving Cert. So the basic point that I'm making to you is join the Zoom call immediately after this, because students need to get organised. And if you begin to get organised now, right, you can build a campaign up over a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and when they move to open the schools, it can become much bigger at that point. You know, we've nearly 4,000 people on this call. How many people could we have involved at that point? And then the government don't just have to listen to what the teachers are saying, they have to listen to what the students are saying. You become a power with a voice in the situation. And we don't want to be your voice. We want you to be the voice, but we want to help you organise in order to do that. What kind of things can be done? Well, we can discuss it on the Zoom call, but a couple of ideas. I mean, simple things. What about if over the weekend and then on Monday, the first day of the online teaching, everybody made something? It might be a placard. It might be a banner that you'd hold out a window, a flag with a basic message on it. Cancel the Leaving Cert. What about our mental health? Whatever you think are the best points to make. The doll has been on its Christmas holidays and is coming back off its Christmas holidays next Wednesday, probably 2 o'clock. I'm waiting for news on that. I think that there should be a Twitter storm on that day, maybe at that time, with Norma Foley getting tagged, with Micheál Martin getting tagged, with Leo Varadkar getting tagged. You know, we are the school students. This is what we want. Cancel the Leaving Cert. Listen to the students, and so on. I think we could make Cancel the Leaving Cert trend on Twitter, maybe become number one in the country, and it becomes a big talking point, etc. If there's 4,000 people on this call, then there's 57,000 Leaving Cert students who are not on this call. Now, 4,000 is a good start. But if the 4,000 go back and talk to the other 57,000, right, and get them interested in the idea of getting organised, campaigning, cancel the Leaving Cert, etc., that would be a step to take. And I think we could maybe pick, you know, this day, same time next week or something like that towards the end of the next week, where we'd come back and we'd have a second meeting and we'd say, okay, how's the campaign going so far? How do we step it up? And so on. So, Leah, have you had a chance to post the details of the Zoom on the chat? Yeah?
Okay. So they've been posted in by some people who are helping us out with this call. I just received a text there to say that they can't get into the Zoom link, that there's an ID required, so I will have to or Gary might sort that out for us beforehand, before the end of the meeting, and we can send it in again. So he'll give me confirmation in about a minute or two if that's sorted.
Okay, well, it's important that is sorted, because that's an important meeting. We'll keep the meeting going until that's been sorted. So I'll make a couple of other points.
Actually, Mick, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Based on what you said. There's a petition going around by incoming sixth years on Instagram that has over a third of all students' signatures asking for predicted grades. But I think if we do take the predicted grades route, we have to learn from the absolute mess that it was last year, because there was a lot of issues with the predicted grades last year. So if it does go down the predicted grades route, first of all, we have to know how it's going to work, because if they're basing it off tests and stuff in class, there's lots of students that would have been close contacts with COVID over the last few months that would have, I hope they didn't, but there is students that would have got COVID. So they have to be brought into account, because a lot of students would have missed out on these exams. So I think it has to be fair, and we have to have a clear view on how these predicted grades are going to work. But saying that, I do think that we really have to acknowledge the students that really do want to sit a fair Leaving Cert exam when it's safe, when the vaccine's out in the summer, that really does acknowledge the amount of time that we've lost. And I think it is possible that if an exam paper is made with more choices, because I'll tell you, the choices made to the paper right now aren't enough. And a lot of students have told me that, especially for subjects like maths and so on and so forth, and chemistry. But I do think that the students that do want to sit a fair exam paper, they're not being heard at the moment. And I do think it's important not to forget them and to bring up both sides of the story. But I do hear your argument, and I do agree with a lot of what you're saying. So that's my point there.
Okay. Thanks for that, Cian. I think we can all agree that we don't want to have young people being forced to do a Leaving Cert when the preparation just hasn't been there because of the disruption of COVID and the issues that can be there in the next couple of months, including around the issue of mental health, the stress of one big exam. Students who want to put forward the idea of having a choice, we will give that fair wind, and we will try and reflect that in the Dáil. I am going to call for the cancellation of the Leaving Cert. I believe that is the best step forward here, and I want to work with people who agree with that point of view, and increasing the number of college places. But I'm not setting my face against the students who want a choice. I think that is a better position than what the government are offering at the moment. And if people want to push that forward, then I wish them luck with it. That's basically my view on it there. Is that okay, Cian? That basic?
I do think that if a paper is made that really does acknowledge the amount of time we have lost, it could be achieved and it could be fair. But listen, there is a lot of work to be done there, and it is a discussion we'll have to keep going. But I hear what you're saying, and thanks for acknowledging it.
Okay. I'll just make a couple of other points before I finish. Before I do, Leah, can I just check, have we got that Zoom link sorted out there?
Yeah, so we're on the same Zoom account, so people can't get into it because we're currently on this meeting. So when this ends, you'll be able to get access to the next one. Okay, and the details are in the chat, and people can get the details there, yeah? Yeah, the details are going to go up as a post on Mick's Facebook. Instagram doesn't allow you to have links that are clickable in stories and stuff like that. So Facebook would be the best bet to get the link, and it'll be posted in the chat as well. But if you're anyway confused or X out of the discussion, then go onto his Facebook and it'll all be there. Okay, so you can get it from the chat, you can get it from the Facebook page. Just the final point that I'd make is I think the last year have been trying times for everybody, but I think they've been trying times in particular for young people. You face a very challenging world. You're in a world where if things are not, action isn't taken within the next, some people say 10 years, some people say 7 years now, you're looking at irreversible climate change. That's a huge
challenge. You are living in a world where, just 2 nights ago, we saw the President of the United States trying to organise a racist mob to overthrow the democratic decision of the people. It's a very volatile world. And the big challenge for you at the moment has been COVID, and that'll continue, but also now is the exams. But I have confidence in young people, and I have confidence in yous. I admire the work that Harita and her Leaving Cert year did last year. They achieved a result. It wasn't without its messy sides, but it was better than them forcing the Leaving Cert through on the terms that the government wanted. So I would encourage people to take heart from that. Young people can get organised. Your voice can be heard, and you can be effective. And if I can help you in any way in that regard, then I'm willing to do a fair bit of work in order to help you out. So not everyone, if everyone leaves this meeting and tries to get onto the Zoom, there's going to be people blocked from getting on. That's the problem with Zoom. It's a maximum of 500 that we have. But I do want to see people from every single school come to the Zoom meeting, and let's have a real discussion about getting organised and having a real campaign on this. So once again, thanks to Leah, thanks to Cian, thanks to Harita, and in particular, thanks to everyone who's been one of the 4,000 who've joined this meeting, and look forward to seeing some of you on the Zoom and being in touch with you all very soon through Instagram, and also the next meeting, which won't be a million miles away from here. Okay, thank you.
Thanks everyone for that. And again, just want to reiterate Mick's points. Thanks everyone for coming. Now we need to get organised. So the Zoom link is in the comments. It's pinned in the comments, and it's going to be posted on Mick's page now in the next 2 minutes. So hope to see a lot of you there. I know that there's a load of ideas, a load of concerns, and we want to have a dialogue, as Mick said, and we want to be able to organise around this issue. So if you haven't signed the sign-up sheet already, please do that. And again, thanks all of you for coming, and we'll see you in the Zoom.
Actually, Leah, do you mind if I just chip in there for a sec? I just want to say to all students that you really do have to mind yourselves during this stressful time, and that there are people out there that will listen to you. I have put out my story. I've been trying to get in contact with mental health advocates like Niall Breslin. So if anyone could put me in contact with him, I'd appreciate that, and just try to start a discussion about mental health and give advice to students on how to best deal with the stress at these current times. So thanks again to Mick and Leah and everyone, and wishing you all the best.
So you have to Zoom, Kim.